How's it going, everybody? Happy Halloween! Yes, I know it is a very weird time to be celebrating Halloween. However, I am going to try and make it a little bit better, and have faith. We're gonna do that today. Today we're gonna be talking about one of my favorite games of I'm cutting the act. Happy Halloween, everybody! Today we're gonna be talking about one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 1, Parasite Eve. Look at that! I have a physical copy of a PlayStation 1 game. It's almost like I've got a ton of them. They're hidden by where I've got the camera angle, but it's fine. But I'm sure that almost none of you have heard of this game before, and if you have, what's wrong with you? I grew up with my father playing this game, and up until recently, I haven't really tried picking it up. So, let's get into it.
15 brutal hours later.
What the hell? So, my PS3 decided to shut off after, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 hours of me trying to play this game. And it didn't save. So the entire last portion of the game corrupted, my save file's gone, and the video file's corrupted. So, thank you to Lacry over on YouTube, because without him this video would not be possible, because I wasn't going through that hell ever again. Released on March 29th, 1999 in Japan, and later September 9th, 1998 in America, Parasite Eve was met with some pretty positive reviews for the time, and is still highly praised by those who have played it today. Following in the likes of Resident Evil, Squaresoft decided to make a third-person shooter turn-based RPG horror game as a spiritual successor to the novel of the same name, which was written by Hideaki Sina. The team over at Squaresoft put all hands on deck in trying to make Parasite Eve as good as possible, bringing on Takashi Tokita to write and direct the story, Tetsuya Nomura to do the artwork, and Yoko Shimomura to compose the tracks for the game. Tokita at the time was best known for being the lead creative writer and director of Final Fantasies 4 through 7, and even Chrono Trigger, so no wonder the storyline ended up being as good as it was. And I'm sure all of you know who Tetsuya Nomura is, but I don't have to explain why the art's amazing. And Shimomura was the composer for every Kingdom Hearts game, so we're in good hands on the music front as well. Tokita took what was already great in the Parasite Eve novel and ripped the story through even more. The story of Parasite Eve, while simple, is still amazing. It's set in the span of 6 days, starting with the metaphorical curtain opening on the main character, Aya Brea, a 25-year-old NYPD police detective, going with her date to the opera on a nice Christmas Eve. As drama unfolds in the opera scene, the entire place and everyone in the audience gets set ablaze, aside from Aya. While all of the commotion and the fire dies down, Aya is able to sneak onto stage and speak to the lead actress, Melissa Pierce, who seemed to have started the fire with ESP. When you speak to her, she talks about how the mitochondria in your body are evolving and to let them overtake you, but Aya isn't buying it. So, as Melissa leaves, Aya follows to make sure that nobody else gets hurt in the process. The next time you speak with Melissa, she transforms into this ungodly being. Speaking of ungodly beings, did I mention the rat that I ran across on the way to Melissa? I don't think I did, so here, let me just give you a quick rundown. As Melissa, later referred to as Eve, explains, our bodies are controlled by the mitochondria within them, which, if you remember Bill Nye, they are the powerhouse of the cell. Eve's main goal is to make it so that everyone's mitochondria become fully independent and help them evolve into more mature and perfect beings, which is what happened to that poor little rat that turned into a demon. And as you see throughout the entire story, it happens to just about everything that you fight. Once you kill the rat and continue talking to Eve, she explains that you have the power inside you to transform as she has. But again, why would you want that? She's genuinely disgusting. Using the mitochondria in your body, you can heal your wounds, or my favorite thing to do is the energy shot. But that's for the gameplay portion of the video. You defeat Eve and she disappears. So you do what any police detective would do and follow her into another hole. This one leading to a sewer. You go down into the sewer, fight off this weird gator dragon thing, and continue on with the story. Which continues with you being the poster child for what happened at Carnegie Hall. Considering other than Melissa, you were the only survivor and the only witness to the events. You get a mission to go to the Museum of Natural Science and speak with Professor Clamp, who was a leading scientist in mitochondrial research, so he's a prime suspect for the goings-on at the moment. After you speak with him and realize he's worthless and won't help you get anywhere, the police department sends you to the next show where Melissa was supposed to be performing. But sadly, you're a little bit too late, as the entire audience gets turned into goop by Gwyneth Paltrow, and you go on another chase for Eve. Whenever you end up going on a chase for Eve, you see a shadow of a little blonde girl in scrubs that more or less leads you in the direction where Eve is going to be, which is kind of nice, I'm not even going to lie. The little girl gives you random memories of a hospital, a doctor, and her, the little girl. It's explained later that the little girl is your sister, Aya's sister, Maya, who passed away in a car accident. After the Gwyneth Paltrow situation, you follow Maya to where Eve is, and shocker, shocker, she tries to make you join her mitochondria cult, and this time you get to fight her in a horse-drawn wagon. You win, and she knocks you unconscious, only for you to wake up in some random person's house where your police officer partner Daniel is waiting for you. Kunihiko Maeda is the person that found you unconscious on the ground after the incident with Eve. Along with Daniel and Maeda, the three of you are together until the end of this mitochondrial nonsense. The three of you travel to the museum where you break into the professor's laboratory and attempt to figure out why Aya is able to survive all of her encounters with Eve. In the process, the evil Dr. Clamp comes back and kicks you all out. Once you get back to the police station, you realize that it is in complete and utter shambles because one of the police dogs, Shiva, went mental and decided to tear everyone apart, injure people, and tear the place to shreds. Once you get to the room where Shiva the crazed police dog is, the police chief and Daniel's son are also there. The second you walk in, though, Shiva transforms into a mitochondria fuckhead, and you have to fight her. In the process, making Daniel's son Ben cry because you had to commit euthanization on a dog, which, fair. Once the Hellhound Cerberus is defeated, you go to a lab where Maeda and the scientist you use as a Pokemon Center during the Shiva section are discussing the mitochondrial reactions and why Eve is so interested, and how everything is happening. Almost a full what, when, why, and how situation, but you realized that Clamp was in on it from the start, which you had presumed, but now you have concrete evidence that he was a part of it, considering he was an intern on the surgery involving your sister and Melissa as children. You dart to the hospital that is the sperm bank where Clamp was harvesting the special sperm for Eve's ultimate being, which is how Eve was created in the first place. There was someone whose mitochondria evolved and gained sentience, began taking over their body. However, the host was too feeble and weak, so the transmission failed and passed on to another, where it slowly evolved over time until it was too much to handle, took over Melissa's body, and brought us to where we are now. This video's all over the place, but bear with me now. I promise it might all be over soon. Well, now that tangent about how the Melissa and Eve conundrum it happened, we can talk about what happens when Aya arrives at the hospital. Surprise, surprise, Eve is there and she's trying to sabotage everything. So you have to go on a fetch quest to retrieve parts to turn the power back on in the hospital, only to come to the realization that this was the hospital that you and your sister were operated on after a car accident. Once you get all the power turned back on, you turn off the liquid nitrogen, freezing the sperm for Clamp's sick shit, and fighting one of Eve's creations, and dodging a fighter jet from crashing into you, all in the span of probably 5 in-game minutes. After you start falling to your almost death, you go with Maeda to Chinatown, enter some more sewers, only to see that all of the people from the Central Park performance from Eve are clumped up and are now going towards the Atlantic Ocean. Once you get back to sea level, you fight a Scolipede from the Unova region, and find a cop dead on a bridge. You hear a noise, look up, see the sludge moving towards the end of Disc 1. While I wouldn't consider Parasite Eve to be a truly horror video game, I will say, unlike Resident Evil 7, the most horrific thing that I had to encounter during this video and this game was switching to Disc 2. Like, I know that nothing bad can really happen. However, I've just heard horror stories of people's saves just getting completely destroyed and you not being able to do it when you switch between Disc 1 and Disc 2. Didn't happen to me, but the issue was still there. And I'm so glad that once, games went to a DVD format, that it wasn't that big of an issue of storage like it was on the PlayStation 1. And even less on Blu-ray. Disc 2 loads straight up, telling us that the giant blob is moving towards the museum. The same museum that's holding Eve and Dr. Clamp. You run around the museum like a chicken with its head cut off in search of Clamp, and every time you're almost to him, he shuts and locks the door with the key that only he has. So that's fun. You fight a bunch of these mitochondria-enhanced dinosaurs, which you realize are actually the blob of people that have just covered the skeletons and brought these dinosaurs back to life. Once you end up actually finding Clamp in his office, he tells you Eve's true plan, which is that he wants to use that mass of people to birth the ultimate being, or a being whose mitochondria have evolved further beyond anything we had seen prior. After telling you the news, he succumbs to Eve and bursts into flames, leaving you his key to find her and fight her to kill her once and for all. You enter a room where Eve is more or less cocooned into, with all of her veins and shit connecting to the walls with the giant pregnant mama belly. She summons this weird golem goop thing made up of the people that got grouped and disappears. After this mess transpires, you, Maida, and Daniel get called back to the station, and on the way, Maida explains all of Clamp's research and how you and Eve are connected. When your sister passed away in the car accident, they transferred her kidney into Melissa's body, which we come to realize that your sister was the host for the original mitochondrial Eve. She had the original rapidly evolving mitochondria that then took over Melissa when she got the kidney. So you now know that Melissa has your sister's kidney, but why are you able to turn and use the Parasite Eve powers? Well, with that, it's because your sister, who again was the original Eve, gave you her right cornea after death. Because both of you had trouble in your right eyes, they transferred the cornea over. So you also had a piece of the original Eve inside of you, and that's why you can use the PE powers. On the way to the station, you get stopped by what you think is a crashing helicopter. However, it's really the United States Navy coming to get Aya and the others so that they can try and defeat Eve once and for all. You get brought to the ship, and then get told that they want you to try and blow up the giant goop golem, since you're the only one who doesn't combust when you get close to Eve. So you do. You bomb the shit out of him. The sludge from the golem starts to shift, and Eve is revealed. You then land the helicopter that you're flying and fight Eve. And that was the point where my PlayStation 3 crashed and lost my save file. I worked on that fight for about 2 days, and albeit I was a little bit stupid and didn't save properly, nor did I back up any of my items. I didn't stock up on revives, medicines, none of that. So the one run where I actually ended up defeating Eve and the ultimate being was the one run where my PS3 decided to shit itself. Thank you again for Lacry over on YouTube for making a long play of Parasite Eve and being really good at it. So if you want to check out someone who actually knows what they're doing, be sure to check them out. Their link is in the description below. And I, again, ever grateful because I would not have been able to do this video without you. Once you defeat Eve, she melts into goop, and you go back to the ship and speak with everyone. There, you're able to stock up on items and properly save, unlike me. While you're standing on the landing deck, you notice the goop starting to part, and a baby demon comes out, which you come to realize is the ultimate being, and that you were too late to stop it. The fight against the ultimate being ends up being 4 stages, each one of them showing the rapid progression of his mitochondrial evolution. You get to the final form, which looks like Chaos from the Sonic Adventure series, and you do no damage to it. Literally 1 damage per bullet. Whilst that fight is going on, the camera pans to Maida and Daniel in the helicopter, where Maida is explaining that he has a solution to beat the ultimate being. But Daniel didn't listen when Maida was trying to originally give them to Aya. The items were bullets with Aya's mitochondria and DNA inside of them. So obviously, they do tremendous damage to the ultimate being. 999 apiece to be exact. You weaken it enough so that you can start running to the boiler room and blow up the ship to smithereens, as you realize that that is the only way to get rid of the crippled being. That was it. Once the ship blew up, the ultimate being was destroyed. And it seems that everyone is hunky-dory and everyone can go back to their normal lives again. The scene goes dark and comes back to you, Maida, Daniel, and his son Ben at the same opera house that started the game. They wanted to make it up to you for not being able to see the play the first time because of Eve. Whilst everything is winding down, you go to sit with Maida, and right as it seems he's about to go in for a kiss, Daniel and Ben cockblock him. The absolute nerve of them to do that makes me upset. Because I felt the same way, Maida. You and me both, bud. We're in the same boat. The scene fades again to the part of the play that started the game. The 3 of you are literally on the edge of your seat because you're scared that it's going to be set ablaze again, whilst being told to sit down by the people behind you because, you know, you're at Carnegie Hall. It's kind of a big deal. Frankly, it's a big deal. The part of the play where everything hits the passes and fades into one of the beautifully animated cutscenes, which genuinely, that's just one thing I didn't really touch on in this video. For a PlayStation 1 game, the graphics were held up beautifully. I can't think of any PS1 game that held up this well and didn't look as polygonally, didn't look at like polygons as much. And the cutscenes to boot are fantastic. But the cutscene at the end of the game shows Aya standing up, the camera zooms into her eyes, the mitochondria in her eyes are evolving, everyone else's eyes go this reddish pink, and then the credits roll.
What was that?
Now, I wouldn't be so mad about this ending if Parasite 2 picked up where 1 lives off, which it doesn't. I checked. Parasite Eve 2 takes place 3 years after that. They don't explain it. The whole point of it is to be ambiguous. And I'm just thinking, why? Why not just explain what just happened? Taking a step towards the gameplay, since we finished the story segment, it's actually quite intuitive for a game that came out in 1998. All of the menus are there, and yeah, you can only do one thing per turn, but that is the whole point of a turn-based RPG. I really enjoyed most of the combat. It was quite simple just to get in range of an enemy, shoot them, and run away with your tail between your legs so you don't get hit by their attacks. Most of the enemies are pretty easy to dodge, with the occasional asshole beetles in the museum, or the bats that just mess with your vision in the subway. Just like every RPG, the way to finish each battle is to lower their HP to 0. However, in Parasite Eve, there are multiple different ways to do that. You could use your gun or a club to shoot and batter them to death. Or you could use my personal favorite and use the PE abilities. To explain what those are, as you level up, you get more PE abilities, or Parasite Eve abilities, but PE shortens it better. Most of them are just HP regeneration, revives, or barriers to tank damage. However, there is an amazing ability you get pretty early on called the Energy Shot, where it uses your entire PE gauge and just sends an energy bullet, just a Kamehameha wave, right into the enemy, which usually OHKOs it, unless it's a boss. Speaking of bosses, once you get to the final two, you have a PE ability called Liberate, which I thought was awesome. I tried using it every time I'd fight them, but it wouldn't do anything because it leaves you just stagnant. But what Liberate actually does is it liberates your mitochondria, just like the name suggests. You swing at the enemy with all you've got, multiple attacks that do over 300 damage each, and if there are multiple targets, they all get attacked. It's pretty fucking sick. Other than that, I can't really think of anything else to talk about, aside from the bonus points you get from leveling up, which you can use to either give special boosts in your weapons, or boost your action timer so that it works a little bit faster. Speaking of faster, the movement in the game could be a little bit better. It is very similar to almost every other horror game of the time, in that it's tank controls with really fucked up camera angles. But here it's surprisingly charming. Like, let's say I was in Resident Evil, the tank controls piss me off there. However, for some reason in Parasite Eve, they don't bother me. It could be the nostalgia boner I have for the game, but probably not though. Because of that fight against Eve, it genuinely made me almost hate this game. Well, that was Parasite Eve. I do still consider it one of my favorite PlayStation 1 games of all time. While I will still acknowledge this has a lot of flaws as a game, primarily because it was from 1998, but I still love it. Do I wish that it got a remake like Final Fantasy VII without the story mess up? Yeah. Would I even be okay with a Final Fantasy VIII-like remaster of the game? 100%. But this was just, to quote the guy who, the director and writer of the Final Fantasy VII remake, said himself that it would be a waste of an IP to not do a remake of this game. So I'm begging you, Squaresoft, please remake this. And you guys, thank you for an amazing Season 1. Have a happy Halloween. I will see you guys at the beginning of Season 2 on November 27th. Peace, guys.